Hey guys, welcome back. And in this video we're going to be discussing the age-old question, graphics versus gameplay versus what's better, what's needed, what's necessary, and what's best. So I hope you enjoy the discussion, guys, and do hit the like button if you do. So let's go ahead and get started. So God of War on the PlayStation 4 just released today. The game is fantastic. I highly suggest you pick it up if you have a PlayStation 4. So far, it is the game of the year, bar none, in 2018, in my opinion. The game is just really well made, and it has by far the best graphics I have ever seen, and many others have said the same thing as well. The amount of detail the game has is simply incredible. The vast amount of textures is unheard of. The lighting effects are amazing. The animation is top quality. So then the question then, after all that graphic stuff is out of the way and it runs great and all those things, the sound quality is amazing. After all of that, the question remains is, does the game actually play well, and is the game actually fun? Well, definitely it is very fun, and it does play very well, and the gameplay feels fresh and multifaceted. There's a lot of different things you can do within the combat, and it's very, very addictive, and the upgrade hook is very good. It really draws you into the game. So yes, the gameplay is extremely fun. This does appear to be a game that has the entire package. So you got extremely good gameplay, you got extremely good graphics, possibly the best there is in the market currently, and from what I played of it, the story is very good and engaging as well. Now, the topic of graphics actually affecting gameplay and improving gameplay has been a topic of discussion for quite a long time, dating all the way back to the Nintendo 64. If you recall, Mario 64 had a huge breakthrough in graphics by moving Mario into 3 dimensions. So you had that 2D Mario side-scroller that moved all the way into a full 360-degree game in what seemed like a realistic world at the time, and the game totally blew everyone away, both with its graphics in 1996 and with its gameplay at the same time. The game was well made, and its gameplay was very fun, addictive, and it was amazing to look at all at the same time. It had the complete package. And the stance that Nintendo had was to do basically all of the above at the time, provide you with the best presentation, the most innovative control, and the most fun gameplay. And then that continued on with the GameCube. You had games like Metroid Prime 1 and Metroid Prime 2, Resident Evil 4, Rogue Squadron 2. Now, you may not remember this, but back when Metroid Prime 1 came out in 2002, it was called the best looking game of all time by some outlets who reviewed the game. They said that overall the amount of detail and the expansive nature of the game gave it that title of best graphics of all time at that time. And then Resident Evil 4 came out in January 2005, and it also was heralded by a lot of outlets who reviewed the game, calling it best graphics of all time at that time. But on top of that, those games had the entire package with it. They had the gameplay that matched the graphics. And what did that do? Well, what that did was, during that time, was that it fully immersed you into the experience to be had. You really felt like you were in the game, like that you were part of that world. Those games did a very good job of doing that. Then you move on to the Nintendo Wii, and that aspect was lessened quite a bit. The graphics were no longer a focal point. It was more about the controller itself, the inputs itself, giving you that immersion to pull you into the game. Now, it was successful for the first few years of the Wii. You had Metroid Prime 3 and you had Super Mario Galaxy. Those games looked very good at the time. Obviously, they were technically inferior to the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3, but for the Wii, they basically looked good enough, and the art style was carrying them good enough to make the games immersive enough to be very much enjoyable. And the controls, being so new and different, also immersed you totally into the game. Then you had the Wii U, which introduced the gamepad, which tried to add that type of immersion with the second screen aspect, but overall most games were using it just as a map. And the games that were releasing on the Wii U were pretty much just Xbox 360 ports with some minor adjustments and enhancements, and some of the exclusives looked very good on the Wii U, like Super Mario 3D World and Xenoblade Chronicles X. Those games looked very good on the system, but they still were never the top of the league, basically. They weren't shooting for the top, and they weren't going to wow you completely. Xenoblade Chronicles X did wow me as far as the world was concerned, but the game still had a lot of graphical issues, and the gameplay of it, while good, was definitely not something that was very innovative, because it was rather repetitive after a while because it was an RPG. Then you move on to the Nintendo Switch, and you have a system that is fully portable, that can be played at home as a home console and on the go with a tablet itself. So obviously the graphical power and performance is not going to be as good or as impressive as PlayStation 4 and Xbox One because of that portable nature of the system. It has to be compacted into that small tablet for you to take it on the go whenever you want to and still have a decent enough experience at home for some of these games. So this brings up an interesting thing to think about. God of War on a PlayStation 4 runs on Unreal Engine 4. It was made from the ground up on Unreal Engine 4 and obviously modified and customized to use every ounce of the PlayStation 4's power. I mean, it uses absolutely everything to make it look the way it does. Now, the Nintendo Switch is also compatible with Unreal Engine 4, so does that mean that the Nintendo Switch could run God of War on its hardware? Well, definitely not in the way it looks on PlayStation 4, that's for sure. But say for this discussion they did that, would the experience at home and on the go be less enjoyable because of the very big graphical downgrade that it would have to have in order to be run on the system? That's a good question, right? Obviously, we don't have an example to show, but we know that the Switch is quite a few times less powerful than PlayStation 4, and since this is the best example of what PlayStation 4 can do on a graphical level, it's very easy to take a guess that this game on the Switch would look nowhere near as good on that system. So would you enjoy the game less because the game looks less good? Would the game be less enjoyable on the go because of the huge graphical downgrade? And in my honest opinion, after seeing this game in action and playing it for myself, I would have to say yes, it would be a less enjoyable experience because the graphics in this game do make the experience so immersive that it pulls you into the world so much so that you are almost convinced that you are in this world. This is a game that has done this more so than any other game I've experienced in the past, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years. This game is really good at pulling you into the game because of the graphics, setting the presentation for you that's so convincingly so that you feel that anything less from this could take you out of the experience. Say you have frame rate drops, say you have screen tearing, say you have flat shaders and low detailed flat polygon models. All these things are distracting to the eye and would take you out of the experience. Now, if you play God of War on PlayStation 4, you notice that there is a lot of details going on, small details, that they even use in gameplay. Just in the first part of the game, and this is not really a spoiler, but just in the first part of the game, the son of Kratos is tracking a deer. Of course, everyone knows this scene, how you're going to go hunt a deer to teach the boy how to hunt. And what he does is that he points to the ground and talks about the tracks that he sees in the snow. And the snow is done very convincingly with physically based rendering, which is a graphical technique for consoles that was introduced very heavily with PlayStation 4 and Xbox One in order to render materials, quote unquote, say like dirt, mud, snow, ice, water, things like that, so they react directly to how the player touches them in the game world. In Uncharted 4, they had the mud on the ground that would really actually get stuck to your tires in your Jeep, and it would get stuck to your clothes. When you made tracks in the mud, they would actually be real tracks that would stay there and that could be ran over and made into different tracks. And the same thing is shown here in God of War with the snow. The snow reacts perfectly realistically to your footprints and other things as well in the game. And the boy points out the size of the footprints in the snow, and he compares them to another animal that has different sized footprints in the snow. And since this technique is done so convincingly with physically based rendering, this graphical technique no doubt would be pared back on a port to Nintendo Switch. They would have to do something differently, right? There you have a good example of how graphics can affect your gameplay experience. Another thing that the game does very well, when you have the transition between real-time gameplay and cutscene gameplay, it obviously uses everything in-game, in-engine, but when it pans close to the faces of the characters, the detail actually gets stronger on them and not lessened in any case. Now, would that be the same on a port to the Nintendo Switch? You know, we don't know, right? But usually with lesser powerful hardware, the closer you get to objects, the more you inspect details, the less detailed they are. Then the flaws of the graphics start becoming distracting and it can take you out of the immersion. We've seen some examples of games where from a distance the characters look pretty good, then you get up close to it and you're saying, ooh, okay, that doesn't look too good after all. I can see all the flaws in it and it's just not very detailed. Or you have weird graphical glitches where a game will actually lose its detail and not load it correctly, and then all of a sudden it'll pop in and a game goes from looking flat and undetailed to having all its detail right in front of you. Those kind of things completely take the player out of the experience. So in my opinion, I do think in this case that graphics have now reached a new level here with God of War that does actually make a big difference to gameplay. And I know what you're going to say as Nintendo fans out there who are watching this is that, oh, I don't care about graphics, you know, graphics don't mean anything to me. I have a great time with Super Mario Odyssey, Breath of the Wild, Splatoon Splatoon 2, Mario Kart 8, so on and so forth, right? So those are great games, no doubt. But you being the gamer, if you had the choice to have both as far as having gameplay and graphics, because you're seeing right for yourself that graphics can enhance the gameplay experience for you as the gamer. For the Nintendo Switch, it has a very nostalgic feel to it. Many others have talked about this as well. There's a lot of indie games on the console. It does offer a different experience, no doubt. But it also does have some modern day games coming to it, like Wolfenstein 2, and it has Doom, and it might even have a sequel to Doom with Doom 2 that we talked about earlier this month. So obviously everyone who owns a video game console would like to have the best experience possible. So that all depends on you and your preference. If in your opinion the best experience possible for you is to make sure the game is portable in every aspect, then maybe it would make sense for you to have a game like Wolfenstein 2 or Doom to be on the Nintendo Switch and only on the Switch for you, and you don't care as much that the game doesn't look as good as the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One versions of the game. We have to remember something here with God of War, is that this game is running on 2013 technology. PlayStation 4 came out nearly 5 years ago, and what it's accomplishing here is basically better than anything that's been done before, and it's doing it on really old hardware. And as we know, the PlayStation 5 has been heavily rumored lately, be coming out basically in 2 years from now, most likely 2020, probably introduced before then, maybe at the end of 2019 or early 2020. And people will know very soon, just a couple years from now, what the next generation will be bringing. And if PlayStation 4 is already doing this right now with God of War, you can only imagine what type of graphical enhancements will take this a step further with PlayStation 5, with deep learning and Ryzen, and the potential of having real-time ray tracing and even more advanced physically based rendering in PlayStation 5 to take all these things you see here in God of War, like the snow effects and the realistic way the world operates in the game, giving the player so much immersion. They could take that way farther in the next generation with PlayStation 5, and I think God of War is a preview of that to come. I'm sure there's a lot of gameplay ideas that developers have that they could use with physically based rendering. There's a lot of puzzle aspects you can do with it, say creating your own path in the dirt or the snow or something like that, or sculpting an object in a certain way and building it in the game and opening up another area doing that. There's a lot of things they can do with physically based rendering that hasn't been touched upon yet with PlayStation 4, and I think this is just the start of it for the next generation. So no doubt developers are really excited for that. Now when you go back to the Nintendo Switch, the Nintendo Switch is still very much based as somewhere in between the Wii U and Xbox One. The current model that is on the market is simply not going to be able to produce the type of experiences that are being shown here with God of War, and certainly not with the PlayStation 5 coming up in the future. What it does hint at is that Nintendo isn't done here, and I do think they're going to have different variations of consoles going forward in the future. Immersion in gameplay is what draws the player into the game more fully, and going forward I do think that developers are going to gravitate even more to this as time goes on. They're not going to go backwards and keep doing retro style games with side scrollers and things like that. AAA development is not going to go in that direction. Obviously there is a market for that with indie games. Indie games will continue to do that, be marginally successful, but the companies that make the most money in the industry are the AAA third-party developers who are making these type of games that really push the limits of both gameplay and with graphics and bring them all together for the player. And remember what we said earlier is that Nintendo was doing this at a certain point, and then they stopped focusing on that with the Wii. But they do have a certain in-house developer that is heavily focused on that type of immersive gameplay, and that is Retro Studios. Can you imagine if they were using the technology of today and of the future, say with like the stuff they're using with PlayStation 5, what type of world they could create with that type of technology for the Nintendo fan who's been waiting to play something like that in the Metroid universe? There is just so much opportunity to be made with a game like Metroid, for example, and even with Zelda going forward. So what I'm saying here and what I make clear is that yes, gameplay and having fun reigns supreme with all games. The more fun that you have, the better. I enjoy retro style games, I enjoy classic games, I enjoy new games, I enjoy all types of games. But as far as where the current landscape is in gaming, I can see where it's going here a little bit in the future, and it looks like the way God of War was built is going to be a blueprint for things going forward for other developers to follow as well. And for Nintendo to get ports from developers that want to make games like that, they're going to have the hardware to run those games. That's just as simple as that. So I think the future is bright for Nintendo, and I think we're going to see some big breakthroughs coming from them in the future, and of course from Sony and Microsoft. I think gaming in the next 2 to 3 years is going to boom even bigger than what it is now, and we're going to be playing some really incredible games in 2020 and 2021 from all our favorite companies, Nintendo, Sony, and Microsoft. But again, this is a discussion video, so I encourage you to discuss this in the comment section. Let me know what you think about all this. Do you think that graphics don't affect your gameplay experience at all? Do you not care about it at all? Or do you think that graphics play a huge part in your gameplay experience? If you have played God of War, let me know about that as well. Let me know about your experience with the game, and I'll look forward to hearing about it. Alright guys, thanks again for watching. Please hit the like button if you did enjoy this video. Subscribe to the channel and follow me on Twitter, and I'll talk to you very soon in the next video. Have a great day.